Here's a quote for you: pouring jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism. That's what Benjamin Netanyahu says will happen if the International Criminal Court issues arrest warrants against Israeli leaders.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel today, urging Hamas to accept Israel's latest ceasefire proposal. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
On Secretary Blinken's seventh trip to the Middle East since the October 7th attack by Hamas and the ensuing war in Gaza, he urged the terror group to accept Israel's latest ceasefire proposal.
The only reason that wouldn't be achieved is because of Hamas. There is a proposal on the table, and as we've said, no delays, no excuses.
Whether or not Hamas accepts the deal, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised the parents of hostages that Israel will invade the Gazan city of Rafah and take out the last Hamas battalions. While the White House opposes an invasion of Rafah on the grounds there's no credible plan to protect civilians, there are reports the IDF will declare a new safe zone for the city's residents. Despite U.S. pressure, Israeli officials believe the Rafah operation is essential to defeating Hamas, securing the border, and rescuing the hostages. Former U.S. envoy Eli Cohen came out of high-level meetings with Netanyahu advisors, believing that invading Rafah is essential.
Nothing could be more clear than the need for Israel to finally and fully eliminate Hamas and Hamas's military capabilities by entering Rafah and destroying the last battalions that exist there.
Some members of the coalition government threatened to pull out if it suspends the Rafah operation, and 2 IDF divisions are preparing for the invasion. Netanyahu now publicly speaking out against reports the International Criminal Court may issue arrest warrants against him and other Israeli leaders, calling the potential move an historic outrage.
Branding Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism, those fires that are already raging on the campuses of America and across capitals around the world. It will also be the first time that a democratic country fighting for its life according to the rules of war is itself accused of war crimes. The Israeli army, the IDF, is one of the most moral militaries in the world.
It's disgusting, and there's no other word for it. It's a terrible hypocrisy. It's going to be a stain on the ICC. And I do hope that the United States, the Biden administration, and European allies are doing everything in their power to prevent such a travesty of justice.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And it will be a travesty of justice if the ICC does this, but it's been expected. Their chief prosecutor went to Gaza in the very first weeks of the war. And you don't send prosecutors to war zones unless you're trying to look for some kind of evidence of war crimes. They weren't trying to examine Hamas. Hamas is sort of an afterthought here, and they're going, well, we probably need to charge them too. Why wasn't that their first thing? Why didn't they go to southern Israel, to the Gaza envelope, to go to Kfir Aza and see the devastation, what the terrorists did? And we call them terrorists, but we also have to recognize this was the government of Gaza. They were elected. They suspended elections after they got in power, but they were elected. It's that government. And if you call it a terrorist group and not recognize it is the governmental authority of Gaza, we're missing the point. That governmental authority has to be dismantled. In the nation of Egypt, the parent organization of Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. In Egypt, they've declared the Muslim Brotherhood to be illegal. They don't allow it to accumulate funds. They don't allow it to have a militia. They don't allow any of these things because they know they're radical Muslims bent on terror acts. We need to have the international community recognize the same thing. Israel has a right to defend itself against terrorism. And when you vow that you're going to repeat October 7th again and again and again, well, then you vowed yourself out of existence. You can't exist as a nation with that kind of threat on your southern border. It needs to be eliminated.